Hey, Coach Travis here, and I got another question that came up in the reflections. This question is about extreme values. So there's this, when we talk about extreme values, sometimes we use the word absolute, sometimes we use the word local, sometimes we use the word global, and sometimes we use the word relative. And this can get all confusing, and that's a lot of words. And where do endpoints fit into all of this discussion? So I wanted to make sure that some things are clear, because this section is hard enough, and we don't want to make it hard because we have confusion about the terminology. So the issue, the absolute versus global and the local versus relative issue is an issue of what book you read. So our book will refer to, if you are the biggest point on, if you are the highest point on the graph of the function, then we will call you an absolute maximum. But other books, they don't use that term. Instead, they say global, because they think about, like, the function is the entire world. And so if you're the highest point in the entire world, then we're going to call you a global maximum. So the point is that absolute and global mean the same thing. It depends on what book you read. But anybody who studied calculus will have been told that these mean the same thing. So it all depends upon what book you read, which word you use. So like I said, our book uses absolute, but sometimes if you read other books or when you watch the videos, sometimes they'll use the word global, but they mean exactly the same thing. And similarly with the words local and relative. So our book uses local. We talk about if you're the highest point in a neighborhood, like right here, if you're the highest point in a little neighborhood, then we would call you a local maximum. But other books don't use the term local. Instead, they use the term relative, I guess, because it's relative. You're the highest point relative to the points that are close to you. And again, every calculus student is told that these mean the same thing. So if you're talking to somebody from a different school, they might use the word relative and you'll use the word local, but you should both know that you're talking about the same thing. All right, and then what about endpoints? So what about endpoints, and what does that have to do with all of this? Okay, so so the thing you want to remember about endpoints is that endpoints can never be local extreme points. So I guess I should say, maybe I'll write it this way: global extremes, those can occur, can occur at endpoints or at interior points. So interior points are just points that are not endpoints. So global extremes can occur basically anywhere. A global extreme can occur at an endpoint, or it can occur at a point that's not an endpoint. But according to the definitions in our book, local extremes can only, I spelled it wrong. Local extremes can only occur at interior points. Can only occur at interior points. And you might ask, well, why is that? Is there a reason for that? And the answer is yeah. In mathematics, there ought to be a reason for everything. And the reason for that is that a local extreme point is supposed to be one that's like bigger or smaller than everything on both sides of it. So like at this local extreme point here at C, the f of C is higher than everything to the left and everything to the immediate right. And whereas this local minimum here, this f of D is smaller than everything to the immediate left, and it's smaller than everything to the immediate right. So we'd call it a local minimum. But if you're an endpoint, you only have one side. So we can't, you can't be, this point here is smaller than everything to the immediate left, but it's not really smaller than anything to the immediate right because there's nothing over there. So for that reason, since there's nothing on the right to talk about it being smaller than, it's not considered a local extreme according to our book. So our book would not call this a local minimum. Now I do have to warn you that some books would call this a local minimum. And so there is kind of there's not a universal agreement on whether something like this should be a local minimum or not. And so it kind of depends on what book you read, but our book says no. So we're just going to use that convention. So endpoints can never be local extremes. Endpoints can be absolute, but they can never be local. So just remember that, and you'll be all right.